जी मैम।
क्या आवाज आ रही है?
जी मैम आ रही।
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I thank you for organizing this very important webinar, and then of course our honorable speaker, Dr. Safdar Ali Shah. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. I think the CPAC is such an important game changer in the history of Pakistan that everybody should be aware of it. And I mean, even now, I feel that most of the time, people look at CPAC as just a economic contract between the two countries and probably just a road and economic zones and so on. But very few people realize its implications in various aspects of life, especially like today we are talking about the consortium of university, this CPEC University Consortium. And I'm very glad that Lahore College for Women University is part of that consortium. We applied last year, and your group, you kindly agreed to make us part of it. And Dr. Zubaida is our focal person, and she's very vibrant and trying to make most of this opportunity of being part of CPAC consortium. So I feel on one hand very honored and privileged to be part of this consortium, and at the same time, I'm very well aware that we should be trying to make most of this opportunity by utilizing all the various aspects. We recently got a call of proposal submissions also, and therefore I feel it is the right time to give information to all our faculty members and young researchers to see how they can make most of this opportunity. Because I still feel that certain details need to be elaborated, and there are some confusions that what is required to be an applicant, and what are the aspects which are going to be covered by a host institution, and what are the aspects which are going to be covered by the collaborating institution. So I feel that it's a wonderful initiative, and it's a very timely talk which you have organized, and learning directly from you, sir, especially because you have a very vast academic experience as well as administrative experience of working in higher education institutions, and now being at the key position leading the university consortium of CPAC related so I feel that your talk is going to be very helpful for us. And being the largest women university in Pakistan, I feel that we will be very privileged and to be part of it and getting maximum benefit from it, because we have a large faculty who are mostly PhD, and they are actively involved in research, and we are starting some new initiatives also. So I think this can really work as a platform for us to boost our research capabilities and our internationalization and international collaborations. So we are very thankful to Higher Education Commission and the initiative by the government for this particular purpose, and your leadership to personally being involved in this project to make it a success. So I feel that with your commitment to make it successful, and as a even focal person from our institution is very much committed, and I'm personally also looking forward to be playing a very active, productive part in this consortium. So therefore, I again thank you, sir, for being with us, and I congratulate Dr. Zubaida for organizing this talk, and I look forward to all the faculty members to be very actively involved and get maximum benefit. Dr. Zubaida, I hope the today's talk will be recorded and it would be available for our researchers and students for if some people cannot join at this moment, so they can get benefit from it afterwards. So I would like the recording to be present, available with the faculty members to our website or web TV. So thank you very much, sir. And I hope that our faculty members will have a very productive interaction with you. Thank you.
थैंक यू सो मच मैम। मैम ये हमारा जो सेशन है ये वेब टीवी पे भी ऑन एयर जा रहा है और हम साथ इसकी रिकॉर्डिंग भी कर रहे हैं ताकि मैक्सिमम लोगों को बाद में हम ये प्रोवाइड कर सकें फॉर देयर गाइडेंस। थैंक यू सो मच मैम। And now I would like to invite Dr. Safdar Ali Shah. He is working as Director General CPAC Higher Education Commission, and he has a very strong background of as a teacher and as an army man. He is graduate from PMA, and then he did his PhD from National University of Modern Languages. He used to be served in different places, like in Burnhall College, Armed Force Board, and National University of Science and Technology. Currently, he is working as Director General CPAC HEC. Please, sir, we would like to hear your valuable talk. Dr. Safdar Ali Shah.
Thank you very much for your gracious introduction, and thank you, Ma'am Vice Chancellor, for allowing me to speak to your faculty. And it's indeed an honor to be talking to the faculty of a leading university and a prestigious university like yours. And I would like to cover this subject with the background of CPAC so that the younger faculty, they understand the whole context of what we are talking about. Just a minute. Can you see my slide?
No, sir.
It is written scheme of presentation.
Sir, आपकी screen share नहीं है.
We did it earlier and I think it was shared.
जी, लेकिन सर अभी हम इसको नहीं देख पा रहे.
So this is I don't know. I think it should be available. Just a minute. So, if you kindly from your side, please allow the screen sharing so that I can then.
जी sir.
Tell your staff to allow me to share the screen.
जी sir. Hello. नहीं.
स्क्रीन शेयर हो रही है ना, तो वो होस्ट शो हो रहे थे, वो भी को होस्ट शो हो रहे हैं, तो उनको होस्ट करवाएं.
ये अहमद को कॉल क्यों नहीं लग रही है?
मैं कर रहा हूँ.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see your screen now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. On the lighter side of it, there is a Murphy's, you must be familiar with Murphy's laws. And it says if something can go wrong, it will go wrong.
Yes.
And if you are in a hurry and you are eating your breakfast, your toast will fall down and it will fall the butter side down. So
very right, sir. Very right, sir.
So, Assalamu alaikum to everybody. I'll start with this scheme of presentation as it is displayed on the screen. I'll briefly talk about the Belt and Road Initiative. It is called BRI, or some people may be familiar with the OBOR, One Belt, One Road concept. Then China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, what is it about? Then CPEC Consortium of Universities, that is the topic, the subject of my talk today. And then academic collaboration under CPEC Consortium of Universities. This is a new initiative, and I will talk about various projects under this and how can your university benefit from all this. The Silk Road, although it is the word is called Silk Road, but basically it was not one road. There were a number of Silk Roads leading to China, and you will be surprised that is the Muslim reached the heart of China much earlier than they came to the subcontinent. Muhammad bin Qasim came somewhere around AD 712, but you see they reached Xi'an, where the Silk Roads started from in 705. There are beautiful mosques there. So the Chinese have an obsession with the Silk Road concept. So they were not only land routes, they were Silk Road also through the sea. So the Chinese, actually, this is their view of soft power. They use this concept, and in 2013, they came up with a mega concept of Belt and Road Initiative, or it is called One Belt, One Road, where belt signifies the land routes or the corridors to various places, and road is the maritime Silk Road. So this is the concept. So the Silk Road Economic Belt, this was announced in Astana, Kazakhstan, you see in an address of Chinese leadership. Now this includes 6 corridors. So this concept of land belts or corridors, it is China, Mongolia, Russian economic corridor, the new Eurasia land bridge, China, Central Asia, West Asia economic corridor, China, Indochina corridor, and then we have China-Pakistan economic corridor, and finally Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar economic corridor. There's the 6. I'll show you a figure in the next slide. Then is a maritime Silk Road. Just within a month of that launch, in an address to the Indonesian parliament, this was announced. That is the Chinese, they announced the maritime Silk Road to share opportunities of economic and social development with ASEAN, Asia, and the world. So that was the concept, and this concept can be seen from this slide. You see in brown colors, there are 6 corridors. The corridors I named earlier, they have been shown. You can see the 2 corridors leading almost to the heart of Europe, and then one to the Middle East, the one China-Pakistan economic corridor, which touches Gwadar, and then Bangladesh, China, Myanmar, and all this. This is another one. If you see, there are dotted lines in blue. So this is the maritime Silk Road. So you can see this maritime Silk Road touches all the points of the land routes. And we are lucky that is at the heart of it, it touches at Gwadar, that is our seaport. So that is the significance of this. Now this is, you see, the Maritime Silk Road, and this is called the String of Pearls. You see, it is the connectivity with a number of seaports in the Indian Ocean and toward on the Pacific side. So this is the China's concept of maritime Silk Roads. Now the whole concept is built on a theory of connectivity. There is a beautiful book by Parag Khanna. It is called Connectography. So I would recommend this book for your library if you can have a copy of it. No, you see, his thesis is that we are accelerating into a future shaped less by countries. By countries, he means by the borders, than by connectivity. Mankind has a new maxim: connectivity is destiny, and the most connected powers and people will win. So that is at the heart of this concept. So connectivity is an extremely important geo-economic and geostrategic instrument. Physical and digital connectivity would decide the destiny of nations. So this is the concept on which this BRI, or you could say OBOR, this was designed. Now, its objectives are that they promote orderly and free flow of economic factors, highly efficient allocation of resources, and deep integration of markets. Then promote connectivity of Asian, European, and African continents and their adjacent areas. Then connect the vibrant East Asia economic circle, which is ASEAN and all this at one end, and the developed European economic circle at the other, encompassing countries with huge potential for economic development. So this is a mega concept, and the smart thing about the whole thing is this concept was linked with United Nations goals, which are called Sustainable Development Goals. And the United Nations Security Council endorsed the BRI, the whole concept, through Resolution 2344, and backed the relevance of the regional cooperation initiative based on the Chinese principle of creating a community of shared future for mankind. That is the slogan of this whole concept. Now, initially it included about 65 countries. Now the number has gone beyond 100. It includes countries and other organizations. Then its estimated investment, although it has not been announced as said, but it said it is around 3 trillion. That is the kind of investment which will go into it. So the BRI offers a window of opportunity for sustainable development across and within countries by aligning with 2030 agenda of sustainable development. And you will be surprised that is CPEC also concludes by 2030. It is closely linked with sustainable development. The BRI can serve as an accelerator for achieving the sustainable development goals, which is the time is 2030. And you will be surprised that Chinese have not only met most of the goals, but they have exceeded certain goals. Recently, they have announced there is no poverty. They have finished poverty and hunger in their country. So above all, it will stimulate the adoption of advanced technologies and services to a high value added manufacturing system. This is very important. High value added manufacturing system, that is what they will do, and we should look for this under China-Pakistan Economic Corridor as well. Now, if you could recall, you see there is the land corridors and the Maritime Silk Road. They were announced in September and October. Before doing that, the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, during his visit to Pakistan in May, he announced this corridor. So we were the first one to be, in a way, taken into confidence on this. Then it was formally launched by President Xi Jinping on April 20th, 2015. So it was a program was given for 15 years. So it started in 15 and it was to be concluded by 2030. So it connects the Silk Road economic belt and the 21st century maritime Silk Road. If you could recall that chart, you see the string of pearls and you see the blue line, it touches, connects at Gwadar. And from Gwadar, it goes up into China. So it is basically an economic corridor between Gwadar port on the Arabian Sea and the China's western Xinjiang region, which is called Xinjiang in Urdu in our parlance. So it is considered as the strategic or economic game changer, because they say it will be, please remember it, this kind of an effort will be a transformation. There has never been such a kind of effort in this region except for the major initiatives launched during the colonial period when the British came here in the middle of 19th century, when they conquered Sindh in 1842, and then in 1849 they conquered Punjab. So that's how, and they started their rail projects and their canal projects and the barrages and whatnot. So this would be a mega project in this case. Initially, this plan included 37 projects. Later, the number was raised to 43, worth 46 billion. That was the initial allocation, but now it has exceeded 62 billion, and more projects are being joined. Subsequently, the present government added more, you see, ideas and projects to it, and especially the socio-economic development and science and technology. You may have got some, or you may have applied for a Smart Classrooms project, which falls under the socio-economic development initiative. This is a $1 billion project. Now, very briefly about the special layout of this, you see, this is one belt. One belt is the complete kind of a corridor which goes down. 3 axes. If you could see this marked in black, 1, 2, 3. One is Peshawar-Lahore axis. You can call them laterals also, which connect. Then it is the Quetta-Sakhar connectivity, and then Karachi and Gwadar. These are the 3 axes which join various routes. And there are 3 passages. You must be hearing about, you can say, the eastern route and the western route and the central route. So these are those passages. And then the 5 functional zones. First zone is in China. This is the Xinjiang zone. This, the neck part of it, which passes through the Himalayas, that is one zone. It has its own peculiarities, its own challenges. And then is our main industrial and agricultural area, which is the Punjab and Sindh. And of course, on the left side, if you see in blue, this is the area of Balochistan, which is rich in minerals. So all these zones have their own peculiarity. And lastly, you have seen Gwadar, Karachi. This is another zone. So this is divided into these zones. Now, these are the roads, or you can call them the eastern route and the western route. So if you see, first of all, if you see the eastern route, which is towards in the Indian side, it goes to Karachi, which we have some existing highways and motorways, and some are coming up. And then the western route, this is also major parts of it are complete and some are under development. So this would also be through very soon. And then it connects right up to, it goes to Khunjerab and onwards to Kashgar. So these are the routes. They are the central route is slightly smaller in length, but it passes through very challenging area. So it will probably will be the last to be developed. And a word about, you see, the coastal area. Well, there are plans to develop each and every region, and each and every region has its own strength in terms of industrial strength and in terms of minerals and agricultural resources. Now, this down below, this concept is called 2 + 1 + 5. 2 means Gwadar and Karachi, which are called the anchor ports. One is this complete zone. It is the tourism zone. You see, are the coastal zone, and five you see ports which will be developed, because when the whole thing goes to its peak, these two ports will not be able to handle the kind of activity it will generate. So we have Jiwani and Pasni and Ormara and Bin Qasim, so and Sumiani. So these are the ports which will also be developed along with others. And this entire area will be developed into a tourism area. You will have, you see, various ships moving with the tourists and developing various islands into tourist resorts like this. A word about Pakistan's exclusive economic zone. You might have heard this term. Now, this is, you see, a country's claim to the territory or the ocean, part of the ocean which is adjoining its borders. In our case, is the Arabian Sea. So recently, you see, this zone was extended internationally. Earlier, we could go up to 200 nautical miles. Now it has been extended to 350 nautical miles. Now, its implication in terms of land is, as a result of this, a total maritime zone of Pakistan has become 30% of its land area. It is more than the combined area of Sindh and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa provinces. So this is the extent of our zone. And if it is developed in terms of, let's say, various underwater resources and fisheries and everything, so it is thought or estimated that Pakistan's economy can triple if this potential is used. Now, these are the famous special economic zones, and starting right from top Gilgit and Rashakai and Faisalabad. And so there are four in the top, and then of course Faisalabad and Quetta, and then two in Karachi. And this does not include Gwadar Free Zone. So these are the areas which will be developed, special economic zones, and they are coming up fast. Now, the next major development is in the field of infrastructure. Now, this infrastructure is, you would see written in red, ML1. We hear every day ML1. It is connecting Peshawar with Karachi road. It is a signal-free corridor. So this is ML1, which will start, should have started earlier, but hopefully it will start this year. Then is ML2. You see another color line here. And then ML3, we will connect this corridor to the neighboring countries, Afghanistan and Iran. Already there is an agreement to start a train service from Pakistan to Turkey. So all this is linked. This is regional connectivity. So this is the potential. And of course, you can see a dot at Havelia port, and from Havelia, there will be a train service will go up. The Chinese are, I think, the most advanced in case of rail connectivity. Their Tibet Railway is, the highest point is beyond 4,000 meters. And you see, you need oxygen to go through that area. So the Chinese have got great expertise in developing train or roads in the mountainous areas. So I think their expertise will come handy in development of this. Now, just a word about us, because people generally ask, oh, where is CPAC? We don't see it on ground, and why it hasn't changed what it is promised, but they forget about its timelines. The first projects to be launched were early harvest projects, mostly energy projects, because to meet the shortage of energy in Pakistan. So they were to be completed by 2018, most of them been completed. The corridor will take its initial shape by 2020. That was the term. You have seen a number of roads being completed, and then it will basically be established by 2025. So we still have another 4 years, and it will be fully completed by 2025. 2030. So its full potential would start in 2030. Then with this background, you see this kind of a mega socio-economic transformation which is going to come in our region, in our country. So in this background, the Higher Education Commission thought, how can they contribute and how can they support this mega project? I just give you an example because, for example, the road connectivity passes through the 3 highest mountain ranges in our north, the Karakoram, the Himalayas, and the Hindu Kush. So now this area, this region is prone to, you see, geohazards. And this is, there are seismic zones here. So we need to protect this for a long-term and sustainable basis. For need, we need expertise in earth sciences. And we had a number of departments in Pakistani universities, but we didn't have that kind of high-tech capability to monitor, to predict the likely hazards. You have seen a kind of disaster in India where there has been a Gulf burst, and that is glacial lake burst. So that kind of, to avoid that, so Pakistan initiated a project which is underway, and that is China-Pakistan Joint Research Center on Earth Sciences, which hopefully would start this year. So with this kind of ideas in mind, CPAC Academic Research and Development Unit was established at HEC in 2017 in January to lead HEC initiatives to support historic transition under China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So the task we were given was to develop linkages with Chinese academia, with Chinese universities. So we visited them, and honestly, they knew very little about Pakistani universities and not even the Pakistan Higher Education Commission. So we created a kind of rapport with them. We established linkages with them, and that resulted in a first meeting in August, in which CPAC Consortium of Universities was established at Islamabad in August 2007 as CPAC Consortium Business Schools. At that time, we thought that is, since it is an economic corridor, so we should link the business schools of the two countries into a kind of an association, into a kind of a consortium. So it was called CPAC Consortium of Business Schools. Under the auspices of China Association of Higher Education, this is a counterpart of HEC on the Chinese side, and Higher Education Commission of Pakistan. So that was the initiative. And then in a follow-up meeting held in Fudan University, it was renamed as CPAC Consortium of University because it was argued that why not include other areas, for example, the area of engineering, the railways, and earth sciences, as I have given you an example. So we developed articles of association, a kind of an agreement with them to guide its activities. So this was the first meeting, a snapshot. If you see on the right side, this is the number of Pakistani universities that participated. There were 10 of them and 9 of Chinese universities. And you will be glad to know that we were able to attract 7 out of 9 universities of China's Elite League of China 9. That is there, you see the most well-known universities, the topmost universities of China, which are listed on the left side. Now, so it was decided that we should have an annual meeting alternatively. That is, one meeting will be in Pakistan, the other meeting will be in China, and likewise. So we started with the 2018, the second meeting was held, and in 2019 we had a meeting in Pakistan. So the 3 exchange meetings so far have been held. The third meeting at Islamabad was attended by 45 Pakistani universities and some universities from China also, including 30 university presidents. They participated in that meet. So the membership increased. Initially, I said there were 19 member universities, 10 Pakistani and 9 Chinese. at the time of inception to 55. Now we have 55 members, which includes 36 Pakistani universities and 19 Chinese universities. It includes your prestigious university as well. The fourth exchange meeting was scheduled to be held in 2020, but due to COVID, it was postponed. And then we thought we will hold it in the first half of 2021, but still we are not very sure. Probably we could go down to September, October, depending upon how does the situation of COVID unfolds. Now, this is the third meeting I'm talking about. It was held in the convention center. And these are, you can see very many Chinese faces. Most of them, they are now good friends. Now they participated here. And some of them, they have become very familiar faces because they keep coming because their authorities in South Asia. There is a gentleman right here, and there is a gentleman, I think it is this one. So this is how it all started. So the number, you see, how did it pay us? You see, we were able to create linkages with these Chinese universities, and our member universities also signed MOUs with them, which resulted in a number of trainings, number of visits to China. So these visits in 2019 report that I submitted, I remember that there were more than 70 delegations that were sent by Pakistani member universities to China, and about 50 to 60 delegation came from China as well. So the more productive part of the whole thing was the trainings. They offered us free of charge trainings, and a number of Pakistani faculty members, they attended those trainings, and scholarships. Now, these scholarships were apart from other scholarships with Pakistanis won in general. And you will be surprised and pleased to know that we have more than 28,000 Pakistani students studying in China. The figure is almost touching 30,000. And recently, China has announced another 2,000 person-year scholarships. But this is the term that they use, that is if one person goes for an undergraduate studies, so for 4 years, so there will be 4 scholarships. So when we translated them into, let's say, undergraduate, masters, and PhD, so we think that 5,000 faculty members will be able to go to China under that program. And the Chinese universities, especially the leading universities, they are well ahead of many universities, even in the West. It is just seeing is believing. What kind of facilities and what kind of labs they have and what kind of resources they have given to those universities. So then another impact of this consortium was, that is the university started, they introduced Chinese language courses. For example, NED University Karachi has made it compulsory for all engineering graduates to complete 2 levels of Chinese language before they graduate. And this has been done by other universities. This is one example. So in 2019, in 1 year, more than 4,000 people, they learned Chinese and qualified these examinations. So another, you see, major outcome was, there was a giant research proposal, the kind of proposals which have been floated now by us. You see, it was a proposal floated by the Chinese Academy of Sciences, that if there is a giant proposal which is approved by the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Pakistan Science Foundation also, and Chinese Foundation, so they will be funded. So one such project which was funded and which is going on is between Zhejiang University and Pir Mir Ali Shah Arid Agriculture University. They're working on a giant research project worth 400 RMB, that is yuans, 400 million. So this is a huge, runs into a few billions. Another significant development was the signing of a document of understanding for establishment of China-Pakistan Joint Research Center on Earth Sciences. So its PC1 is under approval. Its concept been approved. It has gone for confirmation of the funding from the Chinese side through one of their agencies. It is called SIDCA. And under this banner, we are holding a webinar on 18th of this month. It is a high-level webinar which will be attended by the top leadership from the Chinese side and from the Pakistan side. So it is making a headway. So the latest development under this consortium is the approval of a funded project by the government. And this project is called Academic Collaboration under CPAC Consortium of Universities, and that is from my primary, you can say, focus of coming over here. So this is basically an icebreaker, you could say. That is, we are just testing waters, how would, because this is a kind of a mechanism where Pakistani students could go to China, and the Chinese students could come to Pakistan. So the Pakistani universities will be able to attract the Chinese scholars to Pakistan also. So this is a kind of cooperative mechanism. So this project is for 3 years. So we have to complete it in 3 years' time. So this is the proposal recent. Now this project, as I said, to be completed in 3 years, it has 4 focus areas, the 4 major initiatives. One is called Giant Research. Then is talent cultivation and training. Talent cultivation is a term, the Chinese use it for bringing up their talented young people. And of course, training. Then conferences, workshops, and seminars, and establishment of China study centers. So we plan to establish some centers. I'll just go over them one by one. So just to give you an idea, first of all, the Giant Research. Now, this is the same research proposal which you have already received a call. Now, this initiative has been launched as China-Pakistan Research Partnership for major giant research projects. Now, Higher Education Commission is already funding national challenge projects and local challenge projects. So we thought we will use the same format because the universities and the scholars are used to that format, and they know what are the requirements, how to submit those proposals. So it is exactly on those lines, which if you have been doing it earlier or if you've been submitting proposals earlier, so this is the same model that we are using. And that's why the call for Giant Research proposal has been issued by Research and Development Division of HEC, which already is doing this kind of a thing for other projects also. So the last date for submission of the proposal is March 31, 2021. We intend probably holding a session maybe next week if to answer some of the questions which the researchers may have in this regard. Although if you go to our website, most of the questions are answered. In some cases, we have frequently asked questions, and probably if you read the answers, you will be satisfied otherwise also. So these projects, they could go from 50 to 200 million, but that could be the quantum of this support. But you see, there is some condition attached with this. Since it is under the ambit of CPAC Consortium of Universities, we would like this to be led by the member universities from Pakistan, including your university. So the concept is the PI, the principal investigator who is leading the proposal, will be from a member university in Pakistan. So they have to find a partner on the Chinese side in one of their member universities. We have given you the names of those universities. You can approach them. We've already spoken to the Chinese. They are also active on that front. So it will be a kind of giant proposal. And that the concept is to develop a kind of relationship between the universities of Pakistan and China. And that is how the giant research. For example, I made a mention of China-Pakistan Giant Research on Earth Sciences. No, it is not on ground as yet, but you see the core committee which is working on that, they have already submitted more than, I think, 30 giant research papers in the name of that center. So while one researcher is sitting in China, the other one is sitting in Pakistan, and they have developed a concept and, of course, submitted those papers. So this has been a very fruitful concept. You see, the next initiative was talent cultivation and training. The first component is study abroad. Now, this is a concept under which we would like to send Pakistani faculty members, young faculty members, and even students to China for 6 months study. That means it is roughly, you can say, for 1 semester. So they will be funded in terms of, you see, their ticket, and they will be given some living allowance. The only probably condition would be that the host university on the Chinese side should not charge any fee or should give them some, let's say, hostel accommodation. So likewise, Pakistani universities can invite Chinese candidates to their universities. So it will help in internationalization of our Pakistani universities and, of course, developing a long-term relationship. So the Chinese who would be coming, they will also be funded by HEC. And the Pakistanis who will be going under this program, they will be funded under this program, under the new PC1. So this is a totally funded project. And we would like a kind of an exchange mechanism where your faculty members or students go to another university, and you should expect they should send some student to your university in the areas of your specialization. They should spend 1 semester here, do some courses, or maybe do some lab work, whatever the case may be. Then is postdoc trainings. Although the number is not very high, because the Chinese are already awarding a number of scholarships in postdoc areas. One area I can, for example, identify is Xi'an Jiaotong University. Now they have created an innovation harbor, they call it. Now this is a new city where there are more than, I think, 25 high-end research centers. They say research stations, and each station has about 100 to 200 researchers and scholars of the national fame looking after those centers. So we have an MOU with them. We have a letter of understanding with them. That is, Pakistani faculty members can go and do postdoc training there and even PhD there. So that opportunity is there. So, but this one is 15 Pakistani and 50 Chinese postdoc scholars for research and training in Pakistan and, of course, in China. Both ways it will work. And these scholars will be supported by HEC. And of course, we will float these proposals. We are going slow on this because we had an initial interaction with the Chinese. In China, so far, they are not encouraging mobility, physical mobility of people. And we are already confronted with a problem where a number of students who are already admitted in the Chinese universities, they are stranded in Pakistan because they can't go there as yet. So maybe these proposals mature, and of course they are started the second half of this year, or if the situation improves early. So that's why they advised us that we should go with those proposals which involve minimum mobility, physical mobility of people. So these are two which, of course, involve mobility, people going there. Then is the short-term trainings. So there will be short-term trainings available for about 150 Pakistani faculty staff in China. We have already planned this. And as I told you, because there are restrictions, limitations of physically going there, so we have the whole proposal is ready. Once it is possible for the people to go to China, we have identified the places, and we will request our member universities to name the faculty members or send us probable, you see, those candidates. So they will be sent to China for training. Likewise, we have another facility of inviting Chinese resource persons to Pakistan for lectures, you see, to our faculty and staff. For example, if your university takes an initiative, you invite some Chinese scholar, they come here, and maybe the local universities, other universities in Lahore, they can pull up their people who want to be trained. So at one central place, they can be trained. So this would also be supported by HEC. Then is another initiative is dual and joint degree program with Chinese universities. The Chinese are already into such kind of programs with a number of European universities. So we thought, why not explore this possibility with the Chinese? We have discussed with the Chinese authorities, and we have also discussed with certain universities. I'll give you one example. For example, Chinese Tsinghua University, which is in Beijing, is the topmost university. It is either Beijing University or Tsinghua University at the top. They are almost parallel. Now, they have a program, it is called engineering management. Now, under the Chinese, you see, system, you need to qualify for 42 credit hours to qualify for the degree of engineering management. So we discussed a concept where a student completes his or her engineering course here, that is, completes 24 credits in Pakistan. He or she would be left with 6 credits of coursework. So they can go to China, study some more, let's say, credits in China, especially about engineering management, and then earn a degree where that university accepts our 24 credits, and we will accept, you see, the research done there and whatever they have learned there. So they could technically qualify for 2 degrees. One is engineering in a respective field, and then engineering management from China. So this kind of a concept can be discussed. Then there could also be other ideas. So we have 10 slots for BS students. So if the system works, then probably we will get more funding and support more students. And then 20 MS students can go under this program. So under this proposal, we intend holding about 12 conferences and workshops. And the same reason we are going slow on this, because of Chinese traveling to Pakistan. Maybe there are restrictions as yet. So what you can do is, for example, you can choose 1 or 2 subjects. We will float the proposal very soon. And you can think of a subject where you need Chinese scholars, international scholars there, and national. So you can plan this, because it is in the next 3 years. Maybe you can plan a conference, an international conference somewhere next year or thereafter. So there will be 12 conferences, and we will request a proposal from member universities. And of course, where we find the proposals on comparative basis more cogent, of course, they will get the funding for this one. If you have already sent a kind of a working paper which included all these proposals, and some thematic areas are also given there. Then there is a proposal to establish 6 China study centers. I think we have, let's say, a letter of intent from your side also. So the difficulty is that will only support 6 centers, 1 in Punjab, 1 in Sindh, of course, and Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and 1 in Gilgit Baltistan and Azad Kashmir, because number of the universities is small, so 1 slot there, and 1, of course, in Islamabad capital territory. So we have already shortlisted the universities, and very shortly, probably, we will request the shortlisted universities to make presentations on their proposals. So to convince a committee sitting in HEC that their need is greater, or they are the most deserving candidate for this kind of funding. So this funding would involve 2 components. One is, we have identified about 5 members, staff, which could be supported for 3 years. and then we will give some funding for purchase of study material, books and other material. Because you will have to probably organize some language training there. So you can hire a Chinese teacher also, and plus, of course, you can generate other activities in the form of conferences and other things. So then, just to summarize the whole, whatever we have done is about this proposal, and previously I said this China-Pakistan corridor is not just an economic corridor. This is, I would say, an agent of change, a transformation. In India, India was in a static mode for more than 1,000 years before Europeans came. They had come through two very profound experiences of Reformation and then Renaissance. So they brought new ideas. They brought industrial revolution had been there. So when they came, they brought new concepts. So the fastest thing in India, Pakistan at that time was the horse. So then came the mechanical transport. Then came these trains and the bridges. You have some songs about Patans. There were the forts where the boats would cross the river. There were no bridges. So the movement was slow, and the people would, you must have heard those Punjabi proverbs about women. He says, "Jat ye ravi, na koi javi to na koi avi." So if a woman was married from the heart of Punjab to say great distance, the people could rarely go there because it was so difficult movement. So there were the means of production, the methods of production. There were the same artesian well and the same, bullock carts and everything. So the first change, it is called the first industrial revolution. It came at the hands of the European in our areas. So we benefited from those change. We changed our worldview, our literature changed, the way we looked at earlier. The entire worldview was, if you study Hinduism, most of their worldview doesn't go beyond the subcontinent. So when we were exposed to this during, for example, First World War and Second World War, our soldiers were aware that there is a world outside and what kind of facilities or what kind of life is there outside. So that was a revolution. If you study those revolutions called the first revolution and the second revolution and the third revolution, and we are into fourth and some say into the fifth revolution, which is a revolution of disrupting technologies, the new technologies which will make the earlier technologies redundant. For example, if we have electric vehicles, the whole ambit of activities related to the mechanical transport, the workshop and everything, so probably there will be a sea change. So this time, this new revolution which is coming, which has got artificial intelligence and 5G and everything, probably it will come with this China-Pakistan corridor. With that, we have opened another avenue which is called intellectual corridor, or you could say knowledge corridor. When about 30,000 students which are studying in Pakistan and study in China, and they are being replenished. Once they return, they will bring a new research culture into our own country, new ideas. So this is not only an economic, let's say, factor. It is a socio-economic development. Under the new socio-economic development joint working group, which has 6 areas, which includes education and clean water and agriculture, and the 6 areas. So this would be a revolution in those areas also. So this, you can say, CPAC is more than roads, more than railways. It is a transformation of the way we have lived, the way we have worked, and their new working, let's say, practices Once they come and build this railway with their mega machines and with their new technologies, probably we would also be educated, and probably we will go to a higher stage of technical know-how with this. So with that background, we have come to this proposal of CPAC consortium. Unfortunately, because of physical mobility, we have not been able to go, and maybe university like yours, they join the next meeting if it is held in China. So you will interact with other universities and know how you can benefit from their expertise. And of course, they would also like to, we have strength in a number of areas, so they could also benefit from our universities. So this is, I said, there are 4 major proposals. It's a giant research, which has, the call has already been given, the details are there. So you can get more details on the numbers given there of our R&D division in HEC. Then is the talent cultivation. Of course, I gave you, there are 4, you can plan. So once this thing becomes possible, you already have a plan in hand how to send your students and your faculty to China for such trainings and such facilities like postdoc and all this. Because they will be funded, they will help you. Then you can plan some international workshops or seminars over the next 2-3 years. And of course, your proposal is already there with us on China Study Center, and we can wish you good luck, because we will allow you to make a presentation and compete with other universities like yours. And I can only say that it comes to your university. So that's all that I had to say in this session. And now I will be very glad to answer questions if there could be any.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to open the house for questions. If anybody have a question, please ask. Raise your hand and then ask your question. जी, Dr. Faiza, आप अपने आप को अनम्यूट करो.
Assalamualaikum. I would like to ask about the SOPs for
I'm all ears,
postdoc as well as for the dual degrees. Split degrees जो आपने कहा है, उसके लिए SOPs क्या बना चुके हैं या अभी बनाने हैं?
जी, मैं अर्ज करता हूँ. एक्चुअली कोई हमारे पास अभी तक कोई वर्किंग मॉडल है नहीं है, to be very honest. There is in some Chinese universities, they have a restriction. They say that we will not allow 2 logos on 1 degree. For example, if you send a student having completed 2-3 years of undergraduate with you, and they go and complete their degree there, so they do not allow that there should be your logo and the logo of that university on the same degree. Probably in that case, you will have to negotiate with that university that they should accept your credit hours, and then probably they could award a degree, or you should accept their credit hours and award a degree once he or she, they come back to you. So that is, so far, actually, this is on experimental basis. We have discussed a number of ideas with them, but to be very honest, so far we have no concrete proposal, because universities in China are quite autonomous. They make their own decisions. It is not like us at HEC, we make a proposal and give it to you, and we say, okay, follow this. So you will have to negotiate this kind of method where your students can have some value addition going there. I hope it answers your question.
Okay, if we want to proceed for postdoc, then would be, I think, easier at this stage. जिसमें आपको कोई डिग्री इशू नहीं करनी है और डुअल प्रोग्राम नहीं है, जो भी यूनिवर्सिटी उसको एक्सेप्ट करती है उसमें जस्ट एक सर्टिफिकेट देना होगा. उसके लिए अभी कोई अपॉर्चुनिटीज ओपन हैं?
जी, उसमें जो अभी सो फार जो प्रोग्राम ऐसा है कि you have to apply, they have a system that you have to explore the university. I have given you one area. I do not know your area of specialization. Is it from the engineering or sciences side?
Biotechnology, sir.
what area?
Biotechnology.
Biotechnology. Okay. So, for example, in biotechnology, there are a number of Chinese institutes, and they are Shanghai is the hub of biotechnology. In Shanghai, we have Shanghai University, Fudan University. There are two leading universities in this. So, generally, it is done that you should go to their, let's say, profile and see their professors, what area they are working on. And probably you will have to win that kind of a position. And if it involves some funding, of course, it can be funded from this side. So then you can ask.
From HEC.
Ji, we will ask. Ji?
HEC haven't announced any postdocs in this regard.
I said we have purposely not done so. You see, I have given you, these are in the pipeline. We have not done so because they are not accepting people, even the students which are already enrolled, they are here. We have, after this meeting, we are going to hold another meeting to what to do with those students which are for the last 1 year, they're studying here, they are on PhD phase, and they can't go to their universities and do their lab work. So that is why we are waiting, and we have not sent you this kind of a letter in this case.
Thank you. Dr. Farzana?
Ji.
Dr. Farzana, please ask your question. Dr. Farzana, आप सुन रही हैं?
Maybe please ask her to unmute her.
Okay. Dr. Farzana, please unmute your mic. Maybe. I think we should move to the next one, and when Madam will be here, we will give her a chance again.
Okay.
Please, Dr. Sumira Javed, please.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, sir. So what my question is, according to my experience, what I have experienced here with the projects we are dealing with now with the CPEC projects with the China, if we are specified, or HEC may help us with the specified departments of the universities while they will respond to our requests or not, because my experience is that Chinese researchers or the teachers are not so much vigilant to respond as the Europeans or Americans are. Like, they are not responding like if we are in search of some collaborative scientist from the China. So if HEC may help us according to our research fields, that which university we can approach according to our specialty like that.
I can understand your frustration in this regard, but please remember, Chinese universities are expanding their, capacity in terms of, let's say, English language. But mostly, whenever you write, please write to their international office.
Okay.
Because their international office are they are staffed with people who have good language, skills. So then what happens is we send a letter in English, they will translate it into Chinese. And
oh my God. Okay.
So these are some of the challenges. So another good way of connecting is if you could get hold of a Pakistani faculty member who has studied in China.
Okay.
So they have their friends, colleagues in Chinese departments. So you can, I think, reach them, let's say, more easily.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And Dr. Zubaida, I'm coming to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. इसमें मैं भी एक छोटी सी बात ऐड करना चाहूंगी कि no doubt we are connecting to the international officers and making them request for the collaboration. But there is another issue. In the month of Jan and Feb, these 2 months are very, very busy in China with reference to they are on winter holidays, or they are celebrating the New Year, and that's why they are little hesitant to respond in these days. Maybe in upcoming days, they will make the response, inshallah, and we will able to submit the research proposals. Maybe, sir, it may be possible that HSC हमें कुछ proposal submission में extension दे दे last date में, जैसे you have mentioned we have to submit this proposal till 31st March. Maybe if we extend it to 10 to 15 more days, we can get the more proposals and more ideas for this grant.
Okay, I take your suggestion. I'll speak to our the division which has issued the UC call, and we will consider this because we are very mindful. Even on my side, we interact with the Chinese Association of Higher Education, and I know a number of people there. They can speak English as well because we know them personally. And what happened is I received a mail I sent a mail, and answer was that we are on holidays. Please, we will come back by 22nd of last month because they were on Chinese New Year. If somebody has sent, let's say, written a letter or email in those days, the Chinese are very, very particular on this. If it is a holiday, it's a holiday. They would not respond even to your emails. Generally, we do, even on weekends, we entertain people and we return our calls. So that may be a difficulty in terms of holidays, or I said, sometimes the issue is translation, and Chinese is a very structured society. Maybe in our case, the focal person may take some decision on behalf of the senior management, but they will get the decision from the senior management and only then will translate and convey it to you. So this decision making probably sometimes takes time.
जी सर बिल्कुल ऐसे ही. Dr. Farzana is here. I think she can hear us and she will like to ask a question. Please, Dr. Farzana.
Ji, please go ahead.
दोबारा
I can.
I think, sir, maybe madam has some issues with the internet. That's why she couldn't connect us.
That's right.
Okay.
If anyone can you listen me now? I'm sorry.
Ji, ma'am, ji.
I think sorry due to the internet problem, I cannot talk to you now, sir. Thank you very much for this kind information. My question is, there is one suggestion as the previous question Dr. Faiza asked that what about the SOPs? And you said that we have right now not any format for this. My question is that, or you can say that is the suggestion that, as you said, that we can have the 40 credit hours in our university, and then the student can go to the Chinese university. So, and they said that 2 logos we cannot print on the degree. So can we do that once we can complete the more credit hours and then the student move to the Chinese university, then we can award the degree.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Maybe you will have to negotiate with that particular university. I think we can't do it as a package deal in the sense, because the Chinese universities are very independent. We are facing problems in scholarships with China. For example, we have a rough figure that is in China, we have 28,000 to 30,000 students studying there. But we don't have exactly where are all these students, what discipline are they in, and nobody has this data. Because the Chinese universities accept applications online, process applications online, and award scholarships and admissions to the students. So neither HEC nor our embassy in Beijing, they are not, you see, in the loop. So the universities have their own autonomy in terms of certain decision making on this kind of programs like dual degree programs. So maybe you will have to have a, you see, online session with them and discuss, you see, the areas that you are interested in, where there could be some value addition in real terms, where your students could go there for a year or so, they could study part of it and do some research there. And of course, they come back, you see, as more, you see, enabled persons. So, because there is no uniform kind of standard in China where we could say that is you follow this and they will accept it.
Ji, Dr. Farzana.
She has, I think, some issue.
Oh, yes, sir. I think so. Dr. Faiza, again, want to ask something?
Ji, please go
Sir,
ahead.
is it possible that we send you the CVs? जो भी यहाँ का focal person है, वो आपको सारे interested members की CVs share कर दे, और वो आप CVs as such Chinese universities में share कर दें उनके international offices में, ताकि जिसको भी link उनका interest है उससे interact कर सके, क्योंकि otherwise काफी देर से हम try कर रहे हैं, response नहीं कर रही हैं.
Okay, what we can do is maybe we will request the university to send proposal. For example, there is one, let's say, university where we have a kind of a memorandum of understanding with them for postdocs and all this. So in their case, of course, we can do is we can request, you see, from the university, they could send their students, but probably you will have to, I have given you a name, it is called Xi'an Jiaotong University, and their research centers are in, it is called the Innovation Harbor, and if your specialization matches with those centers, then probably you can pursue it and you can bring in HEC into it if you've been directed by the Higher Education Commission to approach you for this, and you may get that position directly from them.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. In the end, I want to thank you very much because you have given us enough time and a very, very fruitful and informative presentation about CPEC University Consortium. And I hope our faculty is very well aware how many opportunities are there for us through this university consortium. And I am also hopeful that we will be in the part of universities who are having China Study Center in their campus. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zubaida. Please convey my gratitude and thanks to your Vice Chancellor for allowing us to have this kind of session. And you have my contact number. Anyway, wherever I can be of any help to a faculty member, it will be a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Definitely, I'll communicate your gratitude to Vice Chancellor. And yes. I'm also thankful to the whole department in Mass Communication Department, especially Dr. Anjum and her team, because they make possible this meeting to happen. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you all my dear
great work. My compliments. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye, sir.